I'd like to call the council meeting of April 15th, 2019 to order. Please rise for the national anthem. Welcome, everyone. I would like to begin by reading a safety notice, particularly with this wonderful large crowd. Mr. Salter says I need to speak up. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate council chambers to the nearest exit through the chamber doors and obey all instructions given by the clerk. If assistance is required, please see the clerk. This is the clerk. Ms. Kirklos. Once you have evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of Town Hall. Also, to remind you, the Town of Lincoln Committee and Council meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. I would like to thank all of you, the team and the team parents, children's parents, and all of those of you who are here for other matters this evening. I want to remind everyone of our rules for engagement, to please be respectful while others are speaking, and to please refrain from clapping, unless tonight, of course, you're clapping for the coach. Delegations will have 5 minutes to speak and are asked to stay focused on the agenda item. I would like to read the land acknowledgement. The Shannonton people have called these lands home for thousands of years, and more recently, the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee have been sharing the land as one dish, one spoon treaty territory. We would like to acknowledge the enduring resilience of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who call this territory home. All members of council are present this evening, with the exception of Councillor John Pachariva. To my right, we have Councillor Diane Rajima, Councillor Tony Brunet, Deputy Mayor, beginning this month, Councillor Adam Russell. To my left, Councillor Paul McPherson, Councillor Mike Mikulik, Councillor Lynn Timmers, and Councillor Greg Reimer. And as you can see, we have a number of staff here this evening to provide supporting information where needed. There are no proclamations this evening. We do, however, have 2 presentations, and please note that presentations may speak for a maximum of 10 minutes. Our first presentation is Tanya Loeb, Executive Director, and Jennifer Wallace, President, Board of Directors, presenting on Gillian's Place, West Niagara. Tanya and Jennifer, please come forward.
Thank you, Mayor Easton and Council. I'm Jennifer Wallace, and I'm the proud president of Board of Directors for Gillian's Place. accompanied this evening by our Executive Director, Tanya Loeb. For over 40 years, Jillian's Place have served the communities of St. Catharines, Thorold, Niagara-on-the-Lake, Lincoln, West Lincoln, and Grimsby from our location in St. Catharines. In 2018, Jillian's Place joined with Beamsville's West Niagara Second Stage Housing to form Jillian's Place West Niagara in an effort to further enhance services to the women and children in the West Niagara communities. We stand before you this evening because it's important that community leaders, such as yourselves, are aware of the many services Jillian's Place offers so that you can share with women in need, whether they're new to Lincoln or have lived here their whole lives. We find that while many are aware of the emergency shelter located on Gibson Place and Niagara Street in St. Catharines, the services we provide to women and their children not staying at the shelter are less known throughout our service area.
So while I encourage you to all view our website at jilliansplace.com for full service descriptions, I'd like to highlight especially the outreach, legal, transitional housing, and counseling services for both women and children that are available to clients whether they're living at the shelter or not. In fact, our in-house lawyer advises approximately 600 clients every year, free of charge, for which we do not receive government funding. While we are funded for a part-time family court support worker, funded 1/10 of a full-time staff member, the volume of need that we have clearly shows that this funding is insufficient. With joining with West Niagara Second Stage Housing, we were able to add the transitional housing program, which we were already coordinating with them as our community partners. But being further involved in the management of this program has magnified the affordable housing issue in rural areas and throughout the region in Niagara, a problem that's already on many councils' radars, I'm sure. When a woman leaves an abusive relationship, oftentimes her finances are tied up for a year or more due to legal processes or a pending sale of assets, prohibiting her from being able to afford permanent housing during that time. So the lack of affordable and transitional housing will often displace a woman from her community, which can jeopardize her job if she has no independent or reliable means of transportation, and also take her and her children away from support systems in their home community. These challenges increase the risk of a woman returning to her abusive partner. This, coupled with seeing the need in the growing West Niagara community for services at both the transitional housing and emergency shelter phases of our work, has our organization talking about how we can further enhance our services in this part of the region. Our vision is to build an emergency shelter here so that women in the rural parts of West Niagara can easily access safety without having to leave their community. There's a lot for these women to process, and so our counseling services are available whether they're in shelter at Jillian's Place or not. Having the ability for them and their children to work through the trauma and get to a place where they can move on with their lives is key to living a life free from abuse. Whether we have counselors at both our St. Catharines and Beamsville locations so that we can accommodate these women and children throughout our service area.
Jillian's Place is grateful for the continued financial support from the provincial government for the shelter, legal, and housing services provided to hundreds of women each year. While we are hopeful that the current funding, which covers almost 70% of our annual operating budget, will continue, we are aware that it's not a guarantee, and there are serious gaps in funding that hinder us from activities such as expansion of essential services throughout our entire service area, additional emergency shelter services as we're always at or beyond capacity, and the key to it all, prevention services, for which we receive no funding at all. We thank our private donors and community members in West Niagara for their ongoing and very generous support. Now we need to take the conversation from just helping victims of gender-based violence access emergency services to addressing the barriers that those women have to creating a new life for themselves by accessing safe, affordable, and permanent housing in their community. So how can you help? Dun, dun, dun. Many voices together can make change happen. So we ask that you include your voice with ours in support of sustainable and increased funding from the province for our much-needed shelter, counseling, and transitional housing services throughout the community that we serve.
And also, as you develop your affordable housing framework this year, Jillian's Place of West Niagara asks that we be included and considered as a stakeholder in finding solutions that will benefit everyone in the community, victims of gender-based violence or not. We welcome your questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. Council, any questions of the presenters? Pretty hard. Okay. Councillor Njima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to the presenters, thank you very much for coming here tonight and letting us know a little bit more about what we do. I know, of course, we're all aware of what Jillian's Place has done, and we're aware of some of the fundraising that's been going on over the years. And, you know, our staff and some council members come out and wore women's shoes, and always a high-profile fundraising activity. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. We've just started up a task force to look into affordable housing in the town of Lincoln, and it's no small feat. So we would be pleased to consult with you and consider you a stakeholder, as you obviously are. And so we've got your contact information. We'd like to reach out and consult with you in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Timmers.
Thank you very much, Mayor Easton. Through you to the delegation, Tanya and Jennifer, thank you very much for coming out tonight. I'm very familiar with Jillian's Place and the work that they do. I'm going to echo Councillor Rajima. I wanted to talk about our housing group that we form, our task force working group. We will be reaching out to all stakeholders because we need the experts to come and help us and give us, show us the way and provide the information and data that we require. So I think I'm just kind of repeating what she had to say, but if you could just talk a little bit about your vision for your emergency shelter. It's desperately needed in the rural areas because there isn't anything. Being in a rural area, you're very isolated, and there really isn't any kind of support. So what would you, if you could just elaborate a little bit, what do you visualize?
Sure. So at this point, it's a vision that we have. So we haven't planned exactly what it would look like, but for us, we become very keenly aware, particularly in the last year, of all the women who are living in the rural areas and in the West Niagara area that have to leave their hometowns and their communities and where all their supports are to come into St. Catharines if they need emergency shelter. And they really can't plan their abuse-free life back in their home community from St. Catharines. So we really our vision is to service, we know there's a need, for sure we have the need. We service many, many women from this area. Not only that, but women who live in rural areas actually have increased safety risks compared to women who live in urban and suburban areas. And so our vision is really to service those women where they're at when they need our help.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you.
Yeah. Likewise, thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Ladies, I was at the breakfast a few weeks ago, and I was certainly struck by the fact that the story is completely unchanged. And it really was quite poignant, and I think we can consider that we've really failed to get very far at all. So I'm pleased that we have an audience here tonight to hear this story again. And to hear how serious it is, because it's not just the adults that suffer, it's all the children as well. So I'm pleased that we have 4 council members. Councillor Rajima is chairing the committee, the task force, and Councillor Timmers, Councillor Mikulik, and Councillor Brunet are all on that committee. So we have 4 good councillors that are really committed to working through this dilemma to see how we can really do the best job we can.
I echo what you're saying about the fact that the story is unchanged. And in fact, it actually has changed. It's gotten worse, and the demand for our services has increased. And in the last 2 years, we've seen a 240% increase in the number of women that we're turning away due to lack of space. So we know that's an issue. We do not, as we mentioned, we do not receive any funding for prevention. And prevention is an essential component addressing the cycle of abuse. So we've been in existence for over 40 years, and we are now servicing the children of women who were in our shelter 30 years ago. And so we know that we need to address prevention and really focus on the cycle of abuse in order to make this problem stop.
Thank you.
So
Thank you
for
very
bringing
much.
that up.
All right, thank you so much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have our second presentation, and I would ask Ray Conkle, the president, presenting on the Friends of Lincoln's History Project. Mr. Conkle, joined by Mary Lou Garr, who grew up in Beamsville, now lives in Grimsby, but spends almost all of her time here. Good to see you. Now, I'm going to ask about the 10 minutes right off the bat. I sort of know my speakers, right? I'm just, how much time do you think you're going to need, Mayor Ray?
Being on the opposite side of the fence, Madam Mayor, but I would like to ask council for permission to extend the time if it's possible.
All right, your pleasure on that request, councilors. Yes, you have unanimous permission, sir.
I'll also introduce Mary Lou Garr, a friend, a founder, and an advocate of both the Friends of Lincoln's History and the Archives, who will be speaking after I speak, if that's possible. Madam Clerk, I hope at this point is showing you, the members of council, a glass suitably protected in an old shoebox. The glass is of Pennsylvania German origin, and it came from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, in and around 1775. It was given to me along with the story of its existence by the late Sam Moyer's mother of Cherry Avenue Farms in 1971. I know you understand that this is no archival piece, but in reality, a piece that should be in a museum. Madam Clerk is now showing you a 1791 account book, suitably protected. This record of sales and purchases was owned by Jacob Beam, the person for whom Beamsville is named. This is an archival piece, a very real part of our history, and like others, should be kept for its historical content. That is what archives do. Thank you, members of council, for your indulgence. The year 2020 marks the 50th anniversary of the creation of the town of Lincoln, with the amalgamation of Clinton, West Louth, and the town of Beamsville. To commemorate this milestone, the Friends of Lincoln's History plans to create a calendar that will feature photographs that will depict buildings, sites, from every area of our town, from Rockway to Durham Side Road. These photos will show those sites as they were in 1970 and now appear some 50 years later in 2020. The Friends of Lincoln's History are here to request that the town become an active partner in the creation of this memorial calendar. This partnership will allow us to use the official town logo in the printing and have permission to call upon the expertise within the town staff in the creation of this calendar. We plan to apply to the revised municipal grant program to supplement the dollars that the Friends of Lincoln's History will put towards the project. We understand that this project has been renamed the Grow, Prosper, Belong Fund and is on your agenda tonight for ratification. The criteria for application has also been changed, and hopefully the Friends of Lincoln's History will be able to benefit from those modifications. Our plan is to sell the calendars, and all profits will remain with the Friends of Lincoln's History to help finance the research and restoration of Lincoln's archival history. We have set a deadline of September 1st to have the calendars ready to be presented to the residents of Lincoln for purchase. We respectfully request council to endorse our project and to become a creative and supportive partner in the undertaking by the Friends of Lincoln's History. Secondly, since 2011, through the generosity and goodwill of the Vineland Research and Innovation Center, the Friends of Lincoln's History has been provided with working and storage facilities. It is our hope that the precious materials that have been carefully preserved and stored there for the past 8 years will become more visible and accessible in the future. It is also important that these photographs and documents be kept in a climate-controlled environment. We congratulate you, this council, on pending construction and opening of the new Museum and Culture Center. Part of this important step forward is the rehabilitation of the heritage designated building that was the former Clinton Township Office Library on Beam Street. The Friends of Lincoln's History request that when the Museum and Culture Center moves on into its long-awaited new home in Jordan, that the former Clinton Township offices will become the home of the Friends of Lincoln's History. What better fit could there possibly be? A building that has climate-controlled environment and the Friends of Lincoln's History who are fully committed to the preservation of our written history as caretakers and tenants of this historical and heritage designated building. A positive decision will provide the climate-controlled atmosphere that's necessary for the fragile documents and photographs, adequate storage areas, a location that will make the history of families and the town available for residents and visitors, excellent working conditions for the volunteers to carry on with their work of preserving our past, the space that will provide us the ability to store, preserve, and exhibit all the elements presently housed now at the Vineland Research and Innovation Center and, of course, elsewhere. If you combine all these factors, it is a perfect fit. We believe that you as council have not yet made a decision on the future use of this building after the Museum and Culture Center moves to its new home. We therefore are petitioning council to consider our proposal to have the Beam Street Heritage designated building as the future and permanent home of the Lincoln Archives. It is, after all, as stated before, a perfect fit for all concerned, including you, the town. Thirdly, the Friends of Lincoln's History is considering a program to preserve the oral history of Lincoln. As we move forward with this undertaking, we will return when we have more specific details to share with council and the citizens of Lincoln. In summary, the Friends of Lincoln History is asking council for two considerations. Become an active partner in the preparation of the commemorative calendar, and when council is deciding upon the future of the Heritage Village on Bean Street, that serious consideration is given to our proposal for tenancy. I will now ask to flesh out a little better the perfect fit by Mary Lou Garr. Mary?
Thank you, Ray. Madam Mayor and members of council, I'm going to just briefly tell you what we do at the archives and why we would be such a perfect fit for you. Up until 2011, the town of Lincoln had a wonderful museum. You're going to have better, but you had a good museum, but you did not have an archives. Every other municipality around you had an archives. And there were some of us who were passionate in the belief that the town of Lincoln, even though I lived in Grimsby, I knew Lincoln needed an archives. So the volunteers knew that we needed this, and we were right. Because since 2011, people have been coming in with boxes. Boxes from grandma's attic, boxes from dad's basement, boxes of stuff. They come in and they say, we didn't know what to do with this stuff. It isn't stuff, it's the heritage and the history of the town of Lincoln. Photos, diaries, family histories, community history, it's all there. And most of it might have been thrown out or given to neighboring municipalities. Since 2011, we've had 214 donors. And by that I mean we assign a donor number to an individual person when they come in with one of those boxes, and they keep that number throughout. And some of them have been back 4, 5, 6 times with more. So we have a lot of donations, but 214 individual people have come through the door and become donors. Every year, we've had approximately 50 historic collections that we have looked after. We accession everything that comes in. We give it a number, we computerize it, and we preserve it properly in acid-free paper and making sure that it's there long after all of us are gone. Now, the result of centralizing all of this archival history has been, weekly we have researchers in our archives sent by a variety of people or people who they find us. They're looking for family histories, they're looking for property histories, they're writing books, they're looking for information about businesses. It's really very satisfying. We also are acting as a resource for many groups in the town. For example, the Lamplighters group comes in every year and does their research for their plays that they put on in our archives. The Chamber of Commerce was in over the winter researching the history of some of their businesses. The museum is in regularly, and in fact, they're coming tomorrow. Sylvia's coming tomorrow to get some pictures from our collections, which I think are going to show up on the wall of your town hall here. The Heritage Committee is regularly in our archives looking for, because we've become the central point for all of this history that used to be in hundreds of houses. We also are attempting to develop an appreciation in the residents of the town of Lincoln for their histories. So we're doing things like plaques. We put 17 plaques up 2 years ago of where there were historic agricultural businesses, trying to blend that in with your Center of Excellence for Agriculture. And why is Lincoln a Center of Excellence for Agriculture? Because of all those amazing historical businesses. And the plaques have been well looked at. We do cemetery tours. We did a tour of the Beamsville Heritage Area, and we like to call it a heritage area because there's a huge amount of history right around the temporary museum. And every 2 years we do a Heritage House tour, which has turned out to be very successful and is our primary fundraising effort for the year. But we have become a victim of our own success. We are running out of room. The Vineland Research and Innovation Center has been wonderful to us. They charge us $1 a year for the space that we have, and that's a wonderful rental price. And we appreciate that generosity, but we are running out of room, which is a function of the success we've had. This archives here is entirely volunteer-driven. all volunteers, and we are entirely self-funded. We haven't received $1 of government money. It's entirely self-funded. And we've also enjoyed the advantage of being independent because we want to continue to safeguard the archival treasures that people have entrusted with us. And so doing that in a wonderful, historic, designated heritage building would indeed be a perfect fit.
Thank you very much, Mary Lou. Thank you very much, Ray. So you're 12 minutes, so that's pretty good. But you must sit down now. Oh. No. The counselors may have questions, so I'm just having a little bit of fun with you. We'll see if there are any questions. Counselors? Counselor Timmers.
Thank you, Mary Stin, through you to Mr. Conkle and Ms. Gar. Thank you very much for coming in tonight. I am a total supporter of Lincoln Archives, and I do think it's a perfect fit. And I would be thrilled to see it there and people being able to go in there and do research on their family history and just the history of the town in general. You know, I've been to the archives, not as much as I'd like to, and I was one of those people that brought a box. And the work that you do is very important to the history in our town, and we need to preserve it and keep it for generations. And I think it would be a perfect fit. I really do believe that. So hopefully we can work together on that and find a solution if everyone agrees with me. But also, as far as the calendar goes and celebrating our 50th year of amalgamation, I think that sounds like a fantastic idea, and I'm hoping, and I'm sure the town will be planning a big celebration of some sort around it as well. But I look forward to that calendar. I'd like to see the historical photos from the 70s. So anyway, thank you very much. I don't have a question, but thanks for coming in tonight.
We should also invite all of you to come and see our archives sometime. Building number 6.
Counselor Brunet. Counselor Brunet.
You have to remember, Madam Mayor, that what you do tonight is archival material,
Yes, sir.
and we'll put it in an archive.
Counselor Brunet has a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Conkle and Ms. Gar, thank you very much for your presentation. I agree with Councillor Timmers that, you know, to commemorate the 50th anniversary, this is a great idea, the calendar, and hopefully we can get behind it and support it and be a promoter to meet your September deadline. My question with regards to the archives, you both made comments. Mr. Conkle, you made reference to the fact that we have archives at the Vyrick, and you said, and elsewhere. Ms. Gar referenced 214 boxes being delivered, donors. So I guess my question is, because I've heard over the last 4 years, comments, don't know whether it's true or false, but I'm asking you, do we have items that are in barns and that are being in jeopardy of items that aren't going to be properly kept because they're not in proper environments and they're in the elements or out in areas where they're getting possible mold? Is that a concern of the Friends of History? And I think I know the answer, but I'd like to hear it.
If I could, through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Burnett, the issue of it being in barns, no. You have control of some of those items that eventually should be in an archival state, and they're here in the town hall, or they're in the museum, or they're at the library at Rittenhouse. They are fragile paper documents. Those are the things that we would look after as a joint effort with you, so that there's no confusion or, well, I've got to go over to the archives for look at one item, and then I got to go to the library for another item, and then I got to go to the town hall to find something else. If they were as fragile as they are, and I'll assure you, I've read all the minutes of this municipality when I was here, there are some that shouldn't be picked up and looked at. They should be kept properly and photographed, digitized. That help? I don't think there's anything in Barnes that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate, you know, the fact that you're coming here for the ask and our consideration about, you know, the historical building on Beam Street. I can assure you that you have someone as Mayor Easton that has been in the ear of Councillor Patrieve and I as ward councillors in Ward 2 to look at that whole area up there as a heritage district. And it's certainly something that I think this term between 18 and 22, we will have some considerable consideration. No promises, but if the mayor has anything to do with it, I think there'll be a positive outcome. Thank you very much for bringing, you know, to the attention of many people about what the Friends of Lincoln do to preserve history. Thank you very much.
Now, we have, based on your, oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Mikulik. Thank you. Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the presenters, I just, I appreciate history, and I love hearing history firsthand from those that have a passion for it. The question I have is, with regards to where you're currently storing your records and your artifacts, do you have any idea how many square feet roughly that encompasses? 548. Wow, okay. Now, have you looked or sourced any other locations possible for what you're trying to accomplish? And the reason why I ask that is because should there be an eviction, you know, I use the word eviction because that's the proper term, and tenancy agreement, disagreement, what's the backup plan should that happen? What would the Friends of Lincoln do in that case?
Would seem to me that, as Mary Lou has suggested, we're running out of space. I would think that we would approach the Vineland Experimental Farm again. There are other rooms, buildings, and places in there that we may store stuff, but it would not be as handy as what we have now, where the people can come and look at the archival material there. It's hard to answer exactly what might happen. In 2005, when we reconstituted the old Beamsville History Club, I think it was going to fold. We had no place to go, and we were successful in getting to where we were or are at this present time, which is the Vineland Experimental Farm. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think we'll do what volunteers always do. We will adjust and adapt, and we'll do whatever we need to do. Because even finding this space was hard, you know, trying to find something that would be suitable. And VRIC, through their generosity, has been very good to us. But if we were evicted, we would have to, you know, come up with, even if it was in somebody's house,
Okay.
you know, and I know that wouldn't be ideal. But I think the benefit to being in Beamsville is that there's no historical presence in Beamsville. Having your temporary museum there now has been wonderful, because you all know that in 1970, when Darcy McHugh said, we're going to have regional government and you're going to be the town of Lincoln, and it was still Vineland and Vineland Station and Jordan Station and Beamsville, nobody felt like they were Lincoln. They were all individual, and people still believe that that museum is a Jordan museum. And you'll never convince them otherwise. It's Jordan Museum, it's not a Lincoln Museum. And having it in Beamsville so that people in town realize, hey, you know what, there is a museum and it's ours, it's Lincoln's, has been wonderful. And if you could keep a historical presence there, when the museum goes back to Jordan, and you know, visually may become a Jordan Museum again. It would be nice to have something still in Beamsville. And I have this little vision in my mind that we could cooperate with the museum and that there could still be some museum artifacts possibly where they are currently, that we could be the safeguard for. So that there still would be kind of a satellite museum presence still, but that's just a dream in the back of my head, so.
Councillors, excuse me, councillors, I believe that it was the purpose of the Friends of Lincoln's History to obtain our support and partnership with them around the calendar. This is a very interesting discussion. It's great to have a room full of people every once in a while that you can speak to an issue that's near and dear to your hearts. You've certainly had that tonight. You have a good question, Councillor, but I think that that piece of it will require a good deal more deliberation in the future.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I was probably going down the road of Councillor Mikulik, so I do want to compliment you and the Friends of Lincoln on the calendar. It's a fabulous idea, and you know, it's certainly a milestone to celebrate, and for you to be first out of the gate and really have something of substance. Good on you, former Mayor Ray, and Mary Lou, and absolutely full support. I too have questions around the whole, you know, brand-new museum and archives and not being together, but it sounds like that we may have more discussion around that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for your consideration. And Councillor Timmers,
Thank you, Mary Stin.
quickly.
Just quickly, I'm wondering if we could give some kind of direction to staff to reach out to the Lincoln Archives to work with them on their calendar project?
All right, well, in fact, thank you very much for that. I'm looking at the wording that was written in Ray Conkle's, Mr. Conkle's document. And so we need a mover for a motion that asks that the Friends of Lincoln's History be considered a partner by the town of Lincoln by allowing them to use the official town logo in the printing and to have permission to call upon the expertise within the town staff in the creation of a calendar commemorating the 50th anniversary of the creation of the town of Lincoln. I'm just checking with the clerk. Yes, yeah. Okay. We'll, in the motion, clerk will reinforce the relationship between the town and the Friends of Lincoln's History, and that they will work together to fulfill the intentions of this request. Thank you. So I'm looking for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Timmers, and a seconder, Councillor Deputy Mayor Russell. Thank you very much, and your pleasure on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Thank you very much. The motion is carried. All right, thank you, everyone. Now, we also have another piece of important business this evening. Under the heading of recognition and achievements. And this is in regard to the Lincoln Minor Hockey Association minor midget team, many of whom are here tonight. So I would like to welcome all of you, all of the members of the Lincoln Minor Hockey Minor Midget BB Blades to council this evening. Some of you may have never been here before. And we're recognizing a wonderful accomplishment for the Blades tonight on winning the Ontario Minor Hockey Association Championship. There are 16 players, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. I think you're all here. Is that right, Mr. Arsenault? I think they're all here. And these young gentlemen are all 16 to 17 years old. They're supported by 3 coaches, a trainer, and a team manager. Gentlemen, Lincoln is a place to grow, a place to prosper, a place to belong. And we hope that in your 16 or 17 years that you have felt that growing up. Community sports are the fabric of Lincoln. And often sports teams are your second family. You create lifelong friendships and you bring our communities together. We thank each of you, the players, for your commitment, hard work, and team spirit. We thank the coaches, the trainers, and the manager for volunteering your time, teaching skills, and values. Our community is proud of all you have accomplished. Congratulations. I would like to welcome Chris Unraw. No, it's not going to be Chris. It's going to be his son, Jeffrey. I don't know how your father got out of this, Jeffrey, but he did. And if you would say a few words, Jeffrey, and then we have certificates to hand out to all of the players, the coaches, the trainer, the manager, and then we're going to have our photo taken. And Luke's here as well from the paper. So, Jeffrey, let's hear your story.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having us. My name is Jeffrey Unruh, and I had the privilege of being part of this year's Lincoln Blades minor midget team. First of all, let me introduce the team. Kerwin Felsberg, Daniel Petsinis, Kobe Early, Blake Stevenson, Jonathan Atkinson, Joseph Assetti, Aidan McKinney, Tyler O'Connell, myself, Colin Barker, Samuel Woodland, Troy Arsenal, Jacob Petsinis, Jason Thomas, Noah McNeil, and Charlie Warner. It was a true honor to be part of such an amazing group. Thank you, boys, for such a great season. This year, we played 52 games in total, including exhibition, tournament, league, and playoffs. Our record was 42 wins, 8 losses, and 2 ties. Some of the highlights from this season included making it to the finals in the South Kent tournament, winning the Niagara-on-the-Lake Christmas tournament, beating Hespeler in the championship game, and eliminating St. Mary's in the finals of the OMHA championship, bringing home the trophy back to Lincoln along with the exclusive Red Hats. In all likelihood, we will be the last Lincoln Blades team to win an OMHA championship, as we are now entering into a partnership with West Lincoln and Grimsby to offer a AA minor hockey to the youth of these 3 communities. Not only was it a memorable experience for the players, coaches, and their families, but it was extra special for a couple of the fathers who won this same trophy 30 years ago and got to celebrate this same accomplishment with their boys a couple weeks prior. It was amazing ride for our team this year, one that created lasting memories for players, coaches, and parents. Thank you, Coach John, Doc, Steve, Kevin, and Dad. Thank you, boys, and good luck as we go our separate ways next season. One last thank you to the town of Lincoln for building such an amazing facility for us to call home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. So now we're going to have a round of applause. When I said earlier there would be no clapping, but it is very appropriate.
Hold that in front of you, Joe. That's a banner. I'm too tall. I'll stay back here. Yeah, I'm used to it. Feel this kid's hands. They're so clean. Oh, they're like soaking wet. Everybody squeeze in. Yeah, I know.
Guys, just wait outside, I got a CD for everybody on the game.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Counselor, we are on item number 7, which is a motion to approve council minutes, which is item 7.1. I have a motion moved by Councillor Njima and seconded by Councillor Russell. Approve the minutes of the following meetings of council. Council minutes of March 18th, 2019, and special council minutes of April 1st, 2019. Do members of council have any questions or comments? There being none, your pleasure on the motion. All those in favor? None opposed, the motion is carried. Councillors, are there any declarations of interest? There being none, we move on to delegations. There are no delegations this evening, and there is no correspondence this evening. We're considering item number 11, recommendations from standing committees. Items 11.1 through 11.5. Do the chairs of the standing committees wish to provide remarks to the items? So we'll begin with I have a motion. Moved by Councillor Mikulik and seconded by Councillor McPherson. Approve the following recommendations from standing committees. Committee of the Whole, workshop minutes of March 25th, 2019. General Business and Finance Committee minutes of April 1, 2019. Committee of the Whole, workshop minutes of April the 3rd, 2019. Community Services and Infrastructure Committee minutes of April 3rd, 2019. And Planning and Economic Development Committee minutes of April the 8th, 2019. We're dealing with these in a block, councillors. Do you have any questions or comments, chairs of the standing committees, on any of those items? Right, there being none, your pleasure on the motion. All in favor and none opposed, the motion is carried. We're now considering item 12.1, Regional Councillor Update, and I would ask that Regional Councillor Rob Foster come forward, who's obviously happy with the way things are going. No. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. And so when the playoffs started, I asked my wife if I could like grow a beard and do the thing with the Ice Dogs, and she said no, but I could wear my sweater everywhere I go. So you'll have to indulge me. By the way, tonight the Ice Dogs are playing in Oshawa. If they lose tonight, they're out. So Oshawa has proven to be a much tougher team than they had expected. So, but if they win tomorrow night, there's a game at the Meridian Centre. So. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak this evening. I just have a few updates for you to bring along this evening. By the way, this is my very heavy-duty week at Niagara Region. I get to attend the Public Works Committee, the Planning Committee. I have to give up my chairmanship for Corporate Services on Wednesday morning because I have to attend an NPCA meeting. So Tim Whalen will be sitting in as my deputy for that. And also I was at another NPCA meeting this morning concerning the Audit and Budget Committee that has been set up at the NPCA. So lots going on. Wanted to talk about a few issues that have been in the news. I'll be curious some of your views on this as well. We'll start with the Burgoyne Bridge. That is an issue that hasn't been going away. We've had our medical officer at the region suggest in very strongly and also in almost every media that I can get a hold of that we should be putting barriers on the Burgoyne Bridge. There's been quite a healthy debate, I might add, at the regional level because of this. And as I said in the St. Catharines Standard, and also I was on CKTV as well, we're not cold-hearted. This is not a situation where, you know, we're not unaware of the consequences of things. The problem is that there's an awful lot of money about to be spent on putting up barriers. And the question is, what's the most effective way of moving forward in the area of mental health within Niagara Region? So what I have stated, and I'm hoping your views are similar, but of course they can be different, obviously. But My view is that if we're going to be putting money into barriers, we also need to be adding additional monies into education programs and making sure that people are able to get the help that they need before this type of a situation arises. There was a lot of concern at the council level as well. There was an event on the Garden City Skyway about a week ago as well. So the question is, you know, how far do we take some of these things? I mean, you know, if a person is going to be taking their own life, exactly what is it that we need to be doing? The argument has come back through to us that the structure, if we put this in place, hopefully will reduce suicide deaths in Niagara. But suffice to say that there's a lot of suicide deaths go on within Niagara. Niagara Falls, they don't publish when that's going on. So again, you know, there's a whole sequence of events that are going on with this and a lot of issues in and around mental health within Niagara. So suffice it to say, it's not as clear cut as some people have been making it out to be. I am on the Procedural Bylaws Committee. We met last week to start our review of the regional procedures that we're making use of. One of the things that's come up is our code of conduct at Niagara Region. I really like what we did last term here in Lincoln about the code of conduct and developing a code that not only you know, is effective, but also in kind of layman's terms as you go on. John Mascarin wrote the original one for Niagara Region, and it was interesting as we were getting into this last Thursday night at the Committee of the Whole. I actually reached out to John. I know him quite well, and he suggested strongly that we should be making some adjustments to our code of conduct before we actually approve it at Niagara Region. So there's going to be some debate about that going on the next little while. Speaking of last Thursday night on the Committee of the Whole, we had the Sancton report came in. Unfortunately, Mayor Easton wasn't able to be at that meeting, but we had the final version coming in from the two doctors from Western. I got to tell you, I was a little underwhelmed with the final report. I think there was a lot of obvious things that were laid out by them. I think there was a few things that they chose to either not explore or miss. But the one thing that was stated by Dr. Corcoran as he was going on is he said it's very obvious that Niagara Region is a far different place than when this requested report was being requested in the first place. So, and I think that was extremely positive. I brought up a couple of issues around it. One is the code of conduct. Also, there was and I don't know how the town of Lincoln is handling it, but if you end up with a challenge, there was a point saying that the expenses for that challenge will not be covered by the region. So in other words, if you have to hire a lawyer as a counselor to defend yourself, you're on your own. There's going to be more debate on that at Niagara Region. I happen to know Alan Thompson quite well. He's the mayor of Caledon, and it cost him close to $250,000 to go and defend himself against vexatious charges back against him. Wasn't necessarily code of conduct, but it was in other areas within development. So suffice it to say, I think there's going to be further discussion going on at the region about that. NPCA, I'm a member of the governance committee with the NPCA. We've had some meetings on governance. The Conservation Act basically states that the municipalities that are involved with the Conservation Authority in the area, it is the municipalities that make the decision on the composition that's coming out of the municipality. So, and in this case, the Niagara Region is the one that's making the decision on how that's to be made up. It's led to a little bit of controversy between the governance committee and backing it through to Niagara Region as well. So we're going to see. There's a motion coming up this Wednesday at the NPCA to talk about this. Basically, what we got back through as discussion points in the background is that we really should be keeping in place what it is that we have for some time to come while this whole issue around governance is, and the composition is totally figured out. There's also a strong move afoot that we wait until the legal case between the City of Hamilton and Niagara Region finishes off. There's a legal case where they're trying to decide who pays for what within that. I think, Paul, you would know about that. But the bottom line is that the recommendation from our lawyers is to wait until that case gets settled one way or the other, and then go forward with final recommendations on how the setup is going to be at the NPCA. Our favorite one for all of us is waste collection. You know, the region is trying very, very hard to I guess, I'll use the term, make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. The problem is that the Mterra project that was put in place, the contract that was there, was extended by 3 years. And the problem is that their equipment has been breaking down consistently all over Niagara Region. I receive, and Mayor Easton does as well, every day, the breakdowns that have been happening within the other municipalities. And to be quite blunt, the service rate at the moment is quite unacceptable. We're having a hit or miss here in the town of Lincoln. I've talked to a number of people that have said that it has improved quite dramatically since we changed contractors. I have also talked to a number of people that have said, you know, things have been missed. I can tell you, even where I live, where Adam is over in my area too, the time of day where they're picking this stuff up has now changed quite dramatically. In fact, they're picking it up very early in the morning, as opposed to it could have been 3 in the afternoon. And so a lot of people are missing that. You know, I know you sleep into what, about 10, Adam? So some people are missing that type of stuff. So the bottom line is that there's some problems with that. Now, Mayor Easton and I both were dealing with an issue with one fellow over on Garden Gate, and I'll give Catherine Habermill a lot of credit. She took care of the problem, and what it was simply making sure that this person had a proper blue bin for their recycling. But it's kind of funny how some of these things rise up and we end up having to deal with them, and sometimes it's just a simple solution that goes and resolves them. So, and that's pretty much it. So, my report for this evening. Thank you,
Okay,
Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Foster. And so this is a really good and full report. We're not here to debate with Councillor Foster. However, if you have questions for clarification on any of the items that he's presented, I'll ask now for those, and I actually have 2 people on the docket here. So, Councillor Brunet.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Councillor Foster, thank you very much for your update and your report. It's refreshing to see your face on a regular basis.
All right, that's it, you're done.
So I'm glad you brought up the last item about the garbage pickup, because I did have a call earlier this afternoon from a Grimsby councillor who is probably right now at their meeting speaking to Councillor Furtick. And his concern is exactly what you said, that in many areas it's not getting any better, it's getting worse. And apparently that's the case in Grimsby. So the councillor that called me was looking at to how the, and I don't know the answer to this, so I through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Foster, how the decision was made that Lincoln would make the change from Mterra to modern, and is there an opportunity for Grimsby, because apparently he's getting inundated every day, is there an opportunity for them to make a change, or is that not in the equation?
So the decision was made at a staff level to go and make the change for Lincoln and West Lincoln. And part of the problem was Emterra was not cutting it right across Niagara region. There was particular problems going on. We were kind of hit and miss here in Lincoln, and don't forget we had a lot of storm events that had occurred late in the year as well that also didn't help things. But it was a staff decision to go and move over that to the other two. And by the way, part of that is through negotiation with Emterra itself, because they realized that they just could not handle this anymore. The breakdowns that they're having staffing problems. You know, they had, it takes something like 68 trucks to be on the road to do the areas that they had. They had 57 out at the beginning of this week. So there's a natural course of events that comes into play with this. I can't answer for Grimsby. You know, there'll have to be more discussions, and just trust me, it's top of mind down at Niagara region. Both Catherine and Ron, in particular, are looking at this file all the time. They've had discussions with. We actually had Emterra in to talk to them about it, and the regional councillors. I think Mayor Easton was there that evening. The regional councillors didn't shy away from letting them have it. I mean, you know, it's really important that they do what they do. Emterra did say back at that point in time, they were, as a company, they were foolish to extend the 3 years that they did. There was no game plan for them. There was no, you know, upgrading their equipment. There was no real thought process going in with that extension, and they're suffering for it now as well.
So just to your comment about it seems to be hit and miss, I mean, for us personally on Mountain View, and I don't know if this is because we're close to West Lincoln, but we're noticing that our pickup times have really been pushed back in the day. So previous with Emterra, we would get picked up. There'd be one truck that would pick up everything: garbage, organic, blue box, cardboard, newspaper. It'd be one stop. So if he came at 2 o'clock, everything was gone, and then you know you could get your box. Now it's like there's one truck comes at 1 o'clock, there's another truck that comes at 4 o'clock, and then there's usually a third truck that comes around 6 o'clock. So it's, you know, and the problem with those windy days is everything's gone by 1 o'clock. So it's been problematic that it's been pushed back in the day. But I gotta say, there's not a day, I'd say, in the last 2 months where we haven't been picked up in that particular day. And I can't say that was the case in 2018.
Replacement company actually has a different philosophy than what Emterra was doing. Their decision was to separate out things a little bit further than what Emterra is doing. And so that's why you're seeing more trucks that are going. And their belief is that their savings are on less trips to the other areas where they have to depot the stuff. So that's a corporate philosophy that they use. I must say, though, from my phone calls that I've been getting and from the emails that I've been getting, it has dropped quite dramatically. But I would really like you guys on town council, if you're getting complaints about this, let me know about it, okay? And I will be more than happy to make sure that, in particular, Catherine knows about it. She and I are talking on a regular basis, and more often than not, it's, are you hearing problems? No, not right at the moment, but please let me know.
Thanks very much.
Satisfactory. Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you, and also it is fantastic to see you out and to see you out on a regular basis. The communication between us and the region is critical, so good to see you out, Rob. On the garbage side, I did get a comment from a farmer that with the change to, I believe it's Canadian Waste, they're not taking any more than one bag. And Emterra, I guess, made it a habit, I guess, of taking more than one bag. So this farmer's comment to me was, you're just going to force us to do more burning of garbage. So I'm not looking for, you know, a solution, but that's just out there in the rural community. You know, we know farmers are going to have a lot more garbage, you know, than we are in a residential area. So something maybe to consider.
really, in the end, the rules are the rules, whether it's rural or urban. So I can tell you, whether it was the previous one or whether it's the current one, I have dropped out 2 bags and I've been left with one. My wife has to remind me to put a tag onto a second one, so you know, that's part of the forgetful politician thing. But anyway, I really can't comment any further on that,
Okay.
Paul. I think you know, the rules around this are what they are, and of course, you know, part of the discussion that has gone on, and where you did have staff in here as well, was where they're going to with the next contract. And it just seems to me that there's a whole lot of backing off has been going on a few things. So I'm looking forward to that discussion going on at Niagara Region. So.
And I appreciate, through you, Madam Mayor, I appreciate your response, and I too put a tag on the second bag.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering how this looks when we go to every other week. And, you know, are there now 4 bags instead of 2 bags at a farming location? But appreciate your comment. Madam Mayor, if I may, I'd like to ask a question that wasn't on Councillor Foster's list. Can I do that? So near and dear to our hearts is the King Street Vineland project. And from what I recall, I think there's a date that's set out there of 2023, which you know is disappointing. You know, I think our residents saw a plan back in 14 or 13 or somewhere in there. So now we're 10 years later before they get anything. And I think if you, and I know you did campaigning out there, if you heard about the downtown and the lack of attention to our downtown Vineland. So I'm going to ask you how we work together to push for an earlier date for that project.
A couple of things. First of all, I was also involved with the secondary plan for the Vineland area when we did that, so I'm quite aware of what it is that we want to do and how we want to do it down through that area. To be perfectly frank, we have been so busy at Niagara Region basically straightening out some of the stuff that needed to be straightened out. An awful lot of these things, such as our 10-year capital plan, those types of things are coming up. And as the chair of corporate services, that's high on my list to be dealing with. We're also taking a look at our budget process as well and starting to look at that, saying, how can we change this to make this process better? I don't give a lot of credit to Mr. Kirkopoulos and staff here at times, but I really do like the methodology that you guys make use of here in the town of Lincoln, and that I made use of for about 18 years as well. And that is, you build from the bottom up and figure out where you're going with your budget. And then what we do is we give our input at the committee level to make sure that these things are known and understood. So there's an awful lot of demands on the region of Niagara right now. This year, we're going to have to borrow close to $60 million to cover the costs of some major infrastructure that's going on. The discussion is it's going to be over $200 million next year to go and take care of things. Let's be perfectly blunt, and I think Mayor Easton will agree with me on this. There was some really dumb things were done by the previous council. There was things pushed off that should not have been pushed off. There are water treatment plants, there are sewer plants, there are things like that that cost big bucks and they were delayed. Well, now the tune is being sung right at the moment. We have no choice. Those things have to be fixed. So bottom line is that there's just a whole lot of things that have to be done. And you know, one of the big things, and Mayor Easton, I'll give her full credit, she's leading the charge on the north-south route to be going in over the escarpment. But if that comes into play, that's a huge outlay of money. It isn't just going to be provincial money. It isn't just going to be money we get from the federal. It's going to be regional money as well. So again, you know, we're going to have to take a good look at where we're going to be spending this, because You know, like you guys had a 7% increase this past year. We had 3.6. I don't see it being less than 3.6 next year at the region. I see it being a lot higher. So, again, there's just a whole lot of things that we got to think through. So, didn't really answer your question, Paul. It was a little bit political.
I'll take that
but-
as a yes, that
yeah,
we're going to work
yeah,
together.
Yeah, yeah. So,
And-
All right, Counselor?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Rob, I know, you know, it's not easy right now down at the region. I appreciate that. I think that, you know, we start the conversation, you know, and we try to move, you know, the needle a little bit. And if we move it a year, great. You know, that's really what we're trying to do. So let's see if we can't, you know, when the timing's right, get a meeting together, and we'll go down and talk about it. Thank you.
if I can add one more thing, Madam Mayor, through you. It is a huge new experience for me working at Niagara Region or being an elected politician there, okay? And, you know, it's the same as you as a councillor from Ward 3 and me as the councillor representing the town of Lincoln. I go and I have to make sure that the needs of our entire town are looked at, not just one particular point, but taking a look at the capital needs within the entire town as I'm going forward. I have worked with Mr. Kirkopoulos, I've worked with the mayor, I've worked with Dave Graham to go through and understand what the priorities are within the municipality. There are a number of things that I am also pushing as well. As you guys know, I was on a tirade for years on traffic safety within the municipality. And I'm still on that tirade with the region at this point in time. So, and there are a number of intersections, there are a number of things that are going to be going into play. And some of these things are critically important as well. It's kind of weird because I have to not only look after the interests of our municipality, as does Mayor Easton, but you know, when they come to me with a good reason why we're doing something in Welland or in Niagara Falls, again, we have to match all of these things together. So it really truly is a little differing way of doing stuff. But it's the same as you guys have to do with the entire town, so.
Thank you very much, councillors. And I believe Mr. Kirkopoulos has an update, which would be beneficial. And then Deputy Mayor Russell has a question.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm just reminded that there is a design kickoff meeting this week that staff are participating in with the region as it relates specifically to the Vineland redevelopment. So I think as that starts and as the community gets more engaged, the topic will remain at the forefront, and I think that further validates the yes comment that I think, Councillor, you heard from Councillor Foster.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kirkopoulos. Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Regional Councillor Foster. As we're not allowed to debate, I will have to let that alleged wake-up time be forgone to another date. But I wanted to go back to your comment on the Burgoyne Bridge and potentially some more investment into the mental health side of things. Again, I recently followed some of the votes and some of the discussions through the region on the barriers for Burgoyne Bridge. But can you elaborate on potentially what the uptake is at Regional Council of investing more into the mental health side of things and even potentially some addiction rehabilitation centers or services? Do those two align in the same bucket of funding, or are they two separate?
It's two separate. One is the operational side of things. One is capital. So we set aside $4 million as part of our capital budget to do something around the Burgoyne Bridge this year. Okay. The current solution that's coming, I was never in favor of the net scenario that they were talking about. The current one that's being looked at is a series of aluminum bars that are going to be along either side to stop people from getting up and out through it. It seems kind of weird, doesn't it? But anyway, that's $3.5 million. So there's about another $500,000 left for other capital items that might be required from that fund. But it is an operational thing. We also got into quite a debate post our budget completion on using monies that were available as the excess at the end of the year. One of the things that I admire about the town of Lincoln is that you guys don't go through the debates that we had to go through. It was like, you know, Department X had extra money in it, so obviously you have to go and get it so that Department X can still make use of that money. No, that's not the way it works. The operational surplus goes into your rate stabilization, and then you as a council get to decide what it is that you're doing with that, okay? So it was kind of a strange argument that we went through with that.
But excuse me, Councillor, you're really looking
So-
to know whether there is, whether the intentions are on the side of
Investing in mental health.
investing in mental health versus any structures. And I'm going to make a comment here, and I don't want to stifle any debate. However, there, you will find, if you look at the conversation from the medical officer of health, that we have been counseled and coached on a number of occasions at the regional table about the language that we use when we're talking about all of these circumstances, because of the expert opinion on the outcomes when you use certain language and how it engages people. I think that's as simple as I can make it. So let's just be very careful. Let's stick to a process or a procedure without speaking specifically about anything at all. I'm sorry that I can't even tell you at this moment what that link would be, but there was one very good one that came through, and if I find it, I think it's coming up this week at Public Health, I will send it to all of you. It's very, very informative. So ask your question with that caution, because I want to be respectful of the caution that the medical officer of health has given us.
Okay, so through you, Madam Mayor, to Regional Councillor Foster, do you believe there will be an increase in funding for mental health within the region over the next year?
Yes. No, actually, and that's part of the reports that are coming up this week. The Public Works tomorrow is dealing with barriers, and then the Public Health Committee is dealing with extended programs in and around mental health issues. And I believe there's something coming up with corporate services on Wednesday morning as well. So the long and the short is, yes, there are additional things going to be done, provided, of course, council agrees with it, but I really don't think they won't be agreeing with it, so.
Good, it's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor. Thanks very much for coming again. We
Yeah.
appreciate your
Great.
time.
Thank you, guys.
I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson and seconded by Councillor Mikulik that council receive update from Regional Councillor Foster on April 15th, 2019. All those in favor, your pleasure on the motion. None opposed, and the motion is carried. We're now considering item 12.2, report LS-08-19, citizen appointment to Heritage Citizen Advisory Committee. We will discuss confidential Appendix A under the confidential items section of the agenda. In the meantime, do members of council have any questions or comments regarding the report? There being none, we will move on then to item 12.3, report LS-09-19, citizen appointments to Age-Friendly Citizen Advisory Committee. Again, we will discuss confidential Appendix A under the confidential items section of the agenda. Do members of council have any questions or comments regarding the report? Councillor Njima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to comment that at our Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee the other day, one of our members, he's the appointee from West Lincoln, and he's going to sit as well on their Age-Friendly Committee. So I want to reach out now and say that there's a lot of interest in working together, because there's obviously a lot of similarities between the two, similar interests between the two committees. So I'm looking forward to that.
Very good. Thank you for advising us of that. And I would like to thank the committee members, the council members who served on these selection committees, and also the significant amount of effort and contribution of the clerk and other staff who were involved. Thank you very much. We're now considering item 12.4, memorandum regarding Niagara Regional Bylaw 2019-07 outdoor secondhand smoke amendment. And I'm going to ask first if, Mr. Kokopoulos, is there anything about this report that anyone on staff would like to clarify? As everyone knows, as you read through this, there was, this is really an amendment. What we're looking at here tonight is an amendment, and it's strictly related to the cannabis.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm going to ask our clerk, Julie, to speak to it, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor. This is strictly, as you said, an amendment, and it requires a triple majority requirement at the region. So all municipalities have been passing this as is, and it's just of routine nature.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kokopoulos?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Seeing that it does also have to do with outdoor spaces, I will look to Director McKay if she's got any additional comments.
Thank you. Director McKay?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we don't have any additional comments at this time, and we support the changes.
You support the changes?
Correct.
Thank you very much. Councilors, do you have any questions? There being none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Reimer and seconded by Councillor Russell that the Council of the Town of Lincoln consents to amend Bylaw 112-2013, being a bylaw to protect children and vulnerable persons from exposure to outdoor secondhand smoke. Your pleasure on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. We're now considering item 12.5. Again, this is, I think this is somewhat of a housekeeping item, but I'm going to ask the fire chief to speak to this. It is a memorandum regarding the Niagara Region Mutual Assistance Agreement. Chief Hudson, if you will.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. You're absolutely correct. It is a housekeeping item. This actually came before council about 6 years ago, and during the course of each municipality in Niagara signing the agreement, it somehow fell off the rails, and this is just a motion to re-sign a refreshed agreement and continue participation in what is really a beneficial program to allow us to share services in the event that we have an emergency.
Thank you very much. Councilors, do you have any questions regarding this report? I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers, seconded by Councillor Reimer, that council approve entry into a mutual assistant agreement as an equal partner with the Regional Municipality of Niagara and all participating local area municipalities to share personnel, services, and equipment in the event of an emergency, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and execute a mutual assistance agreement for the region of Niagara on behalf of the town of Lincoln. Your pleasure on the motion. All those in favor? None opposed. The motion is carried. All right, now, we have an item 13 is the notice of motion. And I just want to remind everyone, I believe that you all received a notice from the clerk today that there was to be a notice of motion brought forward by Councillor Pachariva, and he does plan to still do that at a future date. However, in the meantime, we have a notice of motion regarding truck safety in the town of Lincoln. And in order for this item to be added and considered, we require a 2/3 vote. So I'm going to ask you first what your pleasure is, and all those in favor. And I'm going to be calling out your names for the clerks. All those in favor of this motion being put on the docket, on the agenda. Put up your hands if you're in favor. So we have Councillor Renchima, yes. And Councillor Brunet, yes. And Councillor Russell, yes. Councillor McPherson, yes. Councillor Mikulik, yes. Councillor Timmers, yes. Councillor Reimer, yes. Thank you very much. Now, this motion is moved by Councillor Brunet and seconded by Councillor Timmers for consideration this evening. And I'll read the motion, but I understand that all of you received a copy of it, and that certainly helps, so thank you for that, Madam Clerk. Moved by Councillor Brunet, seconded by Councillor Timmers. Whereas the town of Lincoln is experiencing increased truck traffic, concerns with safety due to truck traffic through residential and downtown sections of the community, and overall the lack of corridors that are specifically designed to handle large-scale trucks. And whereas there is an observed increase in the size of trucks and trailers as well as overall weights being seen through a number of urban and residential areas of the municipality. And whereas there is a concern that scale avoidance may be occurring, and whereas there are few adequately sized and located truck routes that do not go through downtowns or residential neighborhoods. And whereas there are increasingly more large-sized vehicles that cannot negotiate the turns through downtown Beamsville and therefore travel up on the pedestrian sidewalks as normal behavior. And whereas the Niagara region is beginning the EA process, the environmental assessment process for the north-south crossing, Bartlett Road, truck route to try and address the issue of truck safety throughout the town of Lincoln and the West Niagara portions of the region. And whereas residents of the town of Lincoln want to bike or walk safely from and to commercial areas of Beamsville and are unable to given the unsafe pedestrian walking, biking conditions. And whereas the town of Lincoln is in the midst of a transportation master plan. Therefore, be it resolved, A, that the town of Lincoln formally provides support and continue to advocate with the region, other local area municipalities, West Lincoln, Grimsby, and all levels of government for the north-south crossing. B, that the town of Lincoln explore the elimination and prohibition of all trucks, tractor trailers completely on Mountain Street. And should that not be feasible, that the town of Lincoln investigate the elimination of those vehicles that exceed 53 feet, have live bottoms and/or pups on Mountain Street. C, that the town of Lincoln investigate with Niagara Region the possibility of assumption of Mountain Street. D, that the town of Lincoln requests the Niagara Region to designate Mountain Street as a community safety zone as soon as possible. E, that the town of Lincoln continue to work closely with NRPS, MTO, and other agencies on multi-stakeholder and multi-agency strategies to ensure adherence to speed and weights within the town of Lincoln, including a request for more speed enforcement and scale avoidance enforcement blitzes, and that these begin as soon as possible. F, that immediately following the receipt and approval of the Transportation Master Plan, staff come to the Community Services and Infrastructure Committee with both short and long-term strategies. G, that the town of Lincoln request regular safety checks, including weighing and inspections through MTO. And H, that the town of Lincoln provides support and advocate to the Niagara Region for the implementation of specific enforcement measures, i.e. traffic safety cameras or increased police enforcement at Mountain and Regional Road 81, King Street. And I, that the town of Lincoln monitor these changes if, when they are implemented, and furthermore, as part of the monitoring work, note any impacts in the outer limits and/or rural roads with the town. And I'm going to ask Councillor Brunet, would you like to speak to the motion, sir?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity. I just want it for the record to be mentioned that this is not my motion, but I'm pleased to move it forward as the Chair of Infrastructure and as someone who's been on council for the last 4 years and has been hearing throughout the community on a daily and weekly basis that we need to escalate the concerns of truck traffic throughout our municipality and specifically coming into the downtown core. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm pleased to be the person that moves this motion forward. I do just want to make a couple of comments that, you know, under the whereas, you know, we all understand and we're hearing that there's increased truck traffic. We understand that trucks and the trailers that are carrying construction materials are becoming heavier and those weights are increasing. We understand that there could be some potential scale avoidance. And we fully understand through our discussion with the region of Niagara, as recent as a meeting with the West Lincoln mayors and some of the CAOs on February, I believe it was February 26th here in Lincoln, that we had a meeting to discuss with the Director of Engineering, Carolyn Riel, about what are some short-term and long-term solutions. So I certainly support this notice of motion. But I do have some concerns, and I just want to make sure that this, in my opinion, is not a magic wand. This does not put something in place that is going to obviously, you know, resolve the situation. This has been a long-term problem that probably goes back for 30 to 40 years. So I can certainly appreciate that we need to escalate this. We could sit on our hands and sit here and say, that the long-term solution is the north-south Bartlett extension. But anyone that has been following it knows that with the EA and construction and the costs, as Councillor McPherson or Councillor Foster recognized this evening, we're talking millions and millions of dollars, and we're talking a long time for an EA and construction project to go up that hill. Like, we're not talking a number of years, we're talking probably like 12 to 15 years minimum. So we could sit here as politicians on our hands and do nothing and say that's the solution, but I don't think that's something that any of us in this room want to do. So I fully support this motion, but through you, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to make sure that, that I understand as the Chair of Infrastructure and from someone that's been on the ground with Director Graham, involved in some blitzes with the ministry and with the Niagara Regional Police as well as the CAO, that our staff understand what this council wants, and that we will continue to have the support of staff to try to come up with these solutions. And I fully support this motion in terms of a political, bringing something to the political, what's the proper word, forum, so that people understand that we are recognizing. But I do believe that this is something that we have been trying to move along. We're not happy, none of us are happy with the time that it's taking, but I think what's important is we need to concentrate on short-term solutions, and if this is something that's going to do that and move things along and get the approval of the region, that they know that this council is in support of the Northwest, then I fully support this motion this evening.
Thank you.
But I would like, through you, Madam Mayor,
Yes.
maybe the CAO.
Not just yet, but
Okay.
I have that. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very
And I
much.
want to thank you, Councillor, for your understanding of the necessity of bringing this forward at this time. And I believe that as the chair of the Infrastructure Committee, that you are in the prime position to provide leadership on behalf of council for as we go forward. So I'm going to ask Councillor Timmers if she has any comments as the seconder of the motion, and then I will ask the CAO to contribute.
Thank you, Mary Easton. I don't really think I have anything to add. Councillor Bernays said it very well. This has been an issue for 30 to 40 years in our community. And this is, to me, this motion is a long time coming. I'm really happy to see it on the table. I support it 100%. We have to start looking at some kind of steps that we
Oh, because I'm in queue. Should I turn mine on?
Try that.
Okay, my apologies, I didn't realize I wasn't on. I don't know if I'm going to repeat everything I just
No,
said.
just
that I
continue on.
absolutely support this motion, and it's been a long time coming, and I look at this motion as something that will finally bring attention to it, and we'll start making some steps and starting to get a sense of what we can do. And I think there are some things that we can do in the short term. I think we also need to really examine all the details around the trucks and their movements and what's required, because I think that's not something that we've really done before. So I'm looking forward to working on this and delving into it further and getting reports back from staff and moving this forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We now have Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just I have an issue, or not an issue, but a concern with item B, or with the resolved portion of this. And it states that we explore the elimination and prohibition. I find those two words to be quite strong, as there could be some commercial industries or businesses on Mountain Street that could be negatively impacted, or let's say there's the possibility of a citizen requiring a moving truck for a temporary period of time. The elimination and prohibition, would it be possible to have exemptions with a special permit or with a request by the town to allow these sort of trucks? There's a Mountain Street Winery, there's Albright Manor. To say the elimination and prohibition trailers completely on Mountain Street, and Mountain Street, is there a portion of Mountain Street that we focus on, or is it the Mountain Street in its entirety?
Councillor Mikulik, I would ask that we not consider any prohibition, any watering down of this motion. Of course, we have never, ever limited local traffic. And I suspect that when we start to have serious discussions about the very item that you have spoken to, the local businesses and the local activities, that we will soon become knowledgeable about what we are dealing with. But we don't have any of that information now. And we have spoken in the past about prohibiting trucks that do not have business in the town of Lincoln. We've talked about prohibiting trucks from Mountain Street altogether, and we have had these discussions with the region. The problem is that the solution is too far out, and so we have to find other solutions. As Councillor Timmers, as Councillor Brunet has said, we need to find every solution, every short-term solution. In order to do that, we have to put the good, the bad, and the ugly on the table so that we can have a good debate. And that's what this is intended to do. It does not approve anything, but it points out all of the issues that the public have been telling us about for the people around this table, for the councillors around this table, and for at least, I don't know how many years before, at least 15 years or more. This has been a major, major issue. 30 years, I think, we've determined it is. So I am not discounting your comments. They are the right comments to make. We need to make those when we have those discussions on that matter. There will be a reality to all of these items that are on this list, if you would allow us to go through the process.
I trust my fellow ward mates in that ward that this is a serious urgentness, and I will support it. However, those are
Thank
the
you.
concerns that I have with regards to
I understand.
elimination and prohibition.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure that you will bring I trust that you will bring those comments up in the future, and others will as well. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I am also fully supportive of this motion. I appreciate Councilor Brunet's comments, and, I really see this as a start to putting our stake in the ground and that, you know, at least it makes a commitment on on us as a council that we are focused on trucks, and we're gonna do something and not wait until years and years and years down the road when we have that access, that north-south access. What I would like to do is I would like to strengthen the wording around the scale avoidance. And, you know, I think that that is an issue that we mention, but I really see it as kind of blended in with other comments. So if we could, and I see that as a Jordan Road, Victoria Road issue, that we're seeing trucks that are maybe Hamilton bound, heading off on Jordan Road and wandering through Regional Road 81, and then back they go onto the QEW. So I'd like to make a friendly amendment to the motion that we separate out the scale avoidance blitzes, and we bring attention to Jordan Road and Vineland, or sorry, Jordan Road and Victoria Avenue for MTO monitoring during open way scales, if I can.
Jordan Road,
Jordan Road and Victoria Avenue, MTO monitoring during open way scales.
okay. Councillor McPherson, the issue is also relevant for northbound traffic on Victoria Avenue to number 8 Highway.
Yes.
To Regional
Southbound?
81 as well. Yes.
Southbound traffic,
Southbound, yeah.
right,
No,
right.
northbound.
Northbound to the QEW?
They will come to the north, and they won't go that way. They will make a left-hand turn on number 8 Highway, come down to Bartlett Road, turn right on Bartlett Road.
Oh, okay. Coming down from the escarpment.
Yes.
Down from the escarpment, okay.
Um,
Yes.
I'm looking for that item. Oh, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to pass this over to you.
Okay.
With the clerk, you can make your changes. Would the mover and seconder consider that to be a friendly amendment? Councillor Timmers?
I have a question, if we're,
I'll catch you. Councillor McPherson has to lose his spot there for a minute.
thank you, Mary Ston. Just in the amendment, if we're focusing on Victoria Avenue and Regional 81, what about Fly Road? Like, where do we stop
Well,
identifying all the
Fly
roads?
Road is a significant regional road that is outside of the areas where our largest safety issues exist. I know you will argue with me about that.
Absolutely, I will argue with you about that.
So,
But
well,
I would suggest that they're avoiding the weigh scales going along Fly Road as well. I don't know, I'm just wondering if we're gonna start identifying roads, I just wanna put Fly Road out there.
okay, Councillor,
Yeah, I think we just need to focus on the scale avoidance, if we can get that separated.
one more speaker and then.
Do you want me to read what I put down? So, Madam Mayor, I have a friendly amendment to start with scale avoidance enforcement blitzes, and that these begin as soon as possible. Focus on Jordan Road South from QEW, Victoria Avenue, and other roads deemed vulnerable to scale avoidance.
All right, thank you very much. That's, that provides some specifics and some generalities. So I will, if you put your light on Councillor Reimer, go ahead. Councillor.
Just a comment, I totally approve of that. Other roads deemed necessary because they're, Green Lane and Fly Road are by far the most ones that are used to avoid the scales. So that we've addressed that with that amendment, so that's great. Yep.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Councillor. All right, we're going to, go ahead, Councillor B. Oh, yes, absolutely. Mr. Karopoulos, what you're going to have to say does have a bearing on going forward. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thanks to Councillor Brunei for asking that question. As we did have a conversation earlier about this, I think to the councillors, I think comment and point, there isn't necessarily anything new that we're finding within this particular motion. I think it's a way that this is the first time it's probably maybe been packaged and brought together in one document. Director Graham and I did have a conversation this morning. We remain committed and have been committed to continuing to work with the region. I think both Mayor Easton and Regional Councillor Foster will be an important element in that continued advocacy. There are some short-term solutions and short-term improvements that are coming, as Director Carolyn Ryle did communicate when she was here and in subsequent meetings. So I think to the councillor's question specifically, our staff and/or supportive of where things are going? Absolutely. We continue to keep this issue at the forefront of every conversation we're having at a staff-to-staff level, both within the organization and outside of the organization. I can tell you in anticipation of this meeting and this particular motion, I did reach out to a number of stakeholders, my colleagues at both Grimsby and West Lincoln from a West Niagara standpoint, similarly my colleague and Mr. Tripp at the region, as well as the staff sergeant responsible for this particular area, so that everyone's aware of what's coming forward and actually sees it as something that helps validate what we're already doing. So wanting to make sure that that was communicated to those respective agencies from both Director Graham and I.
Thank you very much. And we have a comment from Councillor Brunei.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the CAO's comment on that. I just wanted to, I don't want to take away from this motion in any way, shape, or form, but I just want to also, while it's in the front of my mind, as someone that represented this council at Regional Transportation Steering Committee for the last 4 years, I recall many, many times over those 4 years where the mayors that were sitting on that committee took it upon themselves to use that committee as a venue to express their concerns about traffic and issues within their municipality through that committee. So I just I forget who is our new representative on the Regional Transportation Steering Committee, but if it's Councillor Michalak, I would say that that is a great venue, a great opportunity to use that as a resource to make sure that our comments are being heard. I can think of many times where Mayor Redekop in Fort Erie, Mayor Augustine, and other mayors use that were on that committee. And so I just think it's a missed opportunity if through yourself, Madam Mayor, and through Councillor Foster as regional councillors, but that representative on regional transportation can get that message. And, you know, we did have the opportunity when Commissioner Tripp, you know, was there, and now he's acting CAO, but it was a great pipeline to get those voices heard. So I just wanted to pass that out. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
That's a very excellent point. So there's, that's a good conduit for you, Councillor Michalak, as we go forward. I have Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one friendly suggestion that we circulate this this motion through to our neighbors in the town of Grimsby, town of West Lincoln, and Pelham, as well as St. Catharines, I would think. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. It's duly noted. All right, we're going to deal with the amendment first. I'm not going to read the entire motion unless it's your wish that I do that. But I will repeat Section E, which now reads that the Town of Lincoln continue to work closely with NRPS, MTO, and other agencies on multi-stakeholder and multi-agency strategies to ensure adherence to speed and weights within the Town of Lincoln, including a request for more speed enforcement and scale avoidance. And scale avoidance enforcement blitzes, and that these begin as soon as possible with focus on Jordan Road, south from the Queen Elizabeth Way, Victoria Avenue, and other roads deemed vulnerable to scale avoidance. Your pleasure on the amendment. Any opposed? Councillor Timmers? Would you put up your hand? No, I did not. Thank you. All right, the motion is carried. And now we're going to vote on the entire motion, which has already been read. Is it your pleasure that I read it again? Not required. Your pleasure on the motion. All those in favor? None opposed. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. Excellent. And excellent direction going forward. I think that everything on that list has been mentioned by many people in town over and over and over, and I'm sure we'll get to the bottom of it. All right. Now, we're looking now, considering now items 14.1 through 14.4, and these are the information packages. They can be found online for your review on our website. Do members have any questions or comments from your perusal of those items? There being none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Mikulik, seconded by Councillor McPherson. Receive and file the following council information packages. Council Information Package March 15th, 2019. Council Information Package March 22nd, 2019. Council Information Package March 29th, and Council Information Package April 1, 2019. Your pleasure on the motion? Any opposed? The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers, seconded by Councillor Reimer. Under Section 239 of the Municipal Act, notice is hereby given that committee, wait a minute, that's not what I want. I'm looking for, no, I'm sorry. I've misspoken. I'm now on to item, the motion to consider confidential items, I'm sorry. Under Section 239, as I said, moved by Councillor Timmers, seconded by Councillor Reimer. Under Section 239 of the Municipal Act, notice is hereby given that committee adjourned to closed session in order to address items 16.1, 16.2, and 16.3 on the agenda regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, as it pertains to Report LS-08-19, Citizen Appointments to the Heritage Citizen Advisory Board, Report LS-9-19, Citizen Appointments to the Age-Friendly Citizen Advisory Board, and a matter pertaining to human resources and the Town of Lincoln. Your pleasure on the motion. All those in favor? The motion is carried. can't see. Yes, thank you.
I have a lot of questions about the last three motions that, absent of any senior staff, I ask that maybe we defer those until another meeting.
So Ms. Dale is on her way back. Sorry. Through you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Dale is on her way back. No.
Is Angela still there?
She should be.
Thank you, Ms. Dale. We have a question we may have a number of questions from Councillor Russell. Go ahead, Councillor.
So as it pertains to motion 2019-36, along with the other CIPs we currently have, is it, again, it appears that, and again, if you look at the map from motion 2019-37, that essentially all of Lincoln will be under a CIP, with the exception of Prudhome's, which apparently is pending?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So in regards, probably give you a little bit more background on the industrial and rural areas CIP. So that one there targets just industrial lands and agricultural lands. So generally speaking, it does cover the entire municipality, but it only will apply to properties that are designated or zoned industrial and agricultural. And then the Prudhoe CIP is accepted from that, as well as all of the other three community improvement plans are also excluded from that area as well.
So to follow up, will we have any lands that will not be under a CIP?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, because within sort of your agriculture area, there are other properties that might have a rural commercial zoning on it, for example. That would be one example. So there may be some properties that are not covered by a CIP.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. A few more follow-up questions. The reason I'm concerned about this, and again, coming up with the Prudhomes, but also on the last one as well, or the last motion, which I haven't touched on yet, is, again, based on our earlier meeting on April the 1st, we just transferred over $500,000 to our reserve in order to accommodate some of the CIP costs coming up. And again, I look at the long-term liability of some of these CIPs, and I don't know how functionally we're going to be able to afford them, given our current landscape of economics in the province. Like, without having a firm cap on how much potentially we have as a liability on each CIP, again, it could escalate quickly. And again, it doesn't seem like if you meet the qualifications, basically you're in. There's no differentiation about need it just seems that even based on the documentation from the April 1st meeting, that we have just even a couple coming up that are going to be in excess of $1 million. Plus, there's a range of the tax exemption subsidy, which, again, it gives you the range, but it doesn't give you what the total amount is going to be in lost revenue for this municipality. And when I'm getting residents calling saying that they are unsure if they can afford their property tax, I don't know if this is a wise decision. So I'd like some feedback on that.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So in regards to CIPs, all of this is always any application is subject to available funding. So when there's different ways to look at this. You can look at it from an economic development point of view. So if you take one particular CIP where you might give a tax increment grant or you might give a development charge reduction grant. If that development didn't occur at all, you wouldn't actually be collecting anything. So you can look at it from an economic development point of view, because if the property is currently undeveloped and it gets redeveloped, chances are the assessed value of the property is going to go way up. It's going to create jobs in the community. It'll create, some of them will create more housing. In regards to development charges, the other thing to look at is if the development did not occur, you wouldn't have actually collected those development charges.
But is it needs-based, or is it based on the criteria set forth in some of the secondary plans? Like, take me down to the last one. So, the Utopia, we're gonna extend them a tax exemption for 10 years. And also, it says in the actual motion, it's asking for 2, which according to the CIP, you're only allowed to ask for 1 if you're part of that tax exemption. So that's a concern. But I understand the need for the development, but why are we giving them a tax exemption even well after they're going to be net positive cash revenue? Like, I understand the need for some of the potential rebates in the DC charges. I can understand having a reasonable amount of time between when they start the project until they're actually net positive in revenue. But extending that for another 6 or 7 years after that, when, again, there will be people in this town that will be no longer be able to participate in the benefits of having that development, I don't see that as reasonable. And that applies to all the CIPs that are on there.
Do you have anything further? I'm going to turn to CAO Kirkopoulos to add anything that he can.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. Councillor, I mean, I agree with you. I think in a lot of ways, you make some good points in terms of needs-based versus qualification-based. Typically, our CIPs are not based on need, they're based on qualification and a certain set of criteria. And there is a range if they meet certain developmental standards, as you know, where that increases from anywhere from 25% up to 100%. Typically, they're matching programs with the region. I think as Ms. Dale highlighted, it is on a first-come, first-served basis. And when there's no longer any money, in that particular case, then we're not giving out CIPs. I'm more in favor of those where we provide exemptions or credits where we get the money back first and maybe give some money back versus just writing checks to developers. And I say that somewhat crassly in terms of the process. It is a little bit more intricate than that, but I think looking at the broader economics of any particular development, whether it be Utopia, as you highlighted, which likely will result in a $50 million assessment of that particular project, the number of people it puts to work. I think as Kathleen highlighted, there's a broader economic piece. I think what we always try to wrestle as staff, and this is a conversation I had this morning with Director Safani, is looking at, is the market cooling? Are we heading into a recession? I think as some folks say, and if we're not able to get a development moving, what does that mean from an assessment standpoint? What does that mean from how long that particular development stays vacant or stays dormant or doesn't move forward? And so where is that benefit? I think in a lot of ways it's a philosophical conversation that if a development doesn't go forward. The other option is that it just drives up the price of the home. And when we look at some developments, specifically the condominium type developments where we're trying to have a more affordable product, and I don't use the term affordable housing, but a more affordable product with varied housing stock. I think anything incentives can do to make it more affordable for our residents to purchase something, is what we try to do, and really is that assessment lens that we're using when we're making these decisions. But I think, absolutely correct. I'm of the mindset that we should be giving people credits or exemptions versus actually writing checks to individuals. I think that becomes cost prohibitive in the long run. So are there other ways to incentivize? I think absolutely. I think meeting the criteria in some of these rural CIPs or industrial CIPs isn't necessarily easy. So it's not as as if we're just, you know, going to be sitting there and writing checks. And I know that's not what you inferred. But I think there is some criteria that, you know, need to be met. And so definitely if there's other suggestions councillors have, we can definitely look at these as we move forward. But, you know, I'll emphasize it's a first come, first served basis. And so you mentioned one that finds itself receiving both. I think that one is part of a previous grandfathered in type process where the application was made and the application was sought many months ago. But I know Director Dale can speak to that one and the rationale that we have for that particular one.
Would you like that clarity, Councillor?
Well, the one piece of clarity, I would like that, but I would also like a range of funds that are going to be subsidizing that last utopian development.
Okay, Ms. Dale, you will.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So in regards to its bylaw 2019-38, the Utopia development, that particular property, they did submit their application prior to the recent recommendation to only give them development charge reductions or tax increment financing. The one thing to keep in mind is with this particular property, when they take out their building permit, they have to pay all their development charges up front. They only get a refund if they meet all of the criteria. So in the mixed use intensification community improvement plan, first of all, by being within the area, you get a 50% reduction in your development charges. If you do either a LEED certified building or you meet the region's Smarter Niagara SNP criteria, you can get another 25% reduction. And then if you have what we call an affordable housing threshold, then you can get another 25%. So the thing is, with this particular property, in order to prove that those units are selling for the affordable housing requirement, they're going to also have to provide us with copies of every single deed to show what the purchase price is. And if they don't have that percentage in the end and they end up selling them for higher, they will not get a refund on that portion. So they have to actually build the building in accordance with what they said they were going to do to get their development charges refunded. With the tax increment financing, it's a grant based on 80% of the town's municipal taxes. So based on what it is before and the increase, so it's a grant on 80%, but that rate is fixed for 10 years. So it may seem high the first year, but you know their taxes are going to continually go up and up and up, but their grant is going to stay fixed. And then that's paid out over 10 years.
So do we have a dollar amount or a range for that property? It's hard, again, I know it's hard to assess, because again, you're looking at what's the assessment value going to be. And I don't mean to put you on the spot. It's just something, again, for providing a subsidy to a large development that's going to make millions of dollars for the developers. That's got to be defensible to the people. So I've got to start arming myself with some of those considerations.
Councillor, Mr. Kakopoulos has a response.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and Kathleen's probably pulling up the same chart I am. The estimated impact value upon completion of Utopia will be $51,913,168. Current assessed value, $499,000. So the level of taxes being paid on that, and we can definitely do some modeling for council so that you have that and are equipped to make those, you know, types of, I think, you know, rationale and conversations with residents. The estimated annual tax incremental piece is $205,000
per year.
And so that's on an annualized basis, I believe, for that particular property. We can definitely, you know, I can give you a very crude calculation at $2,000 in property tax per unit on 300 units, and what that means in terms of $6 million in additional taxes on a given year, of which 1/3 would be the town of Lincoln's. So that would be $2 million minus the $205,000 grant. So, I mean, you can see how the scope of the type of modeling that we would want to do for council as it relates to particular developments starts putting these into the context of the type of investment that a property that's currently assessed at 1/100th of what you know, the value that it will be assessed at following development.
Councillor, would you like the CAO and staff to prepare that model?
I would.
Others? All right, you can take that as direction, Mr. CAO. Thank you very much, Ms. Dale. Mr. Councillor Russell, anything further? Thank you very much. I now have Councillor Njima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so the discussions we've had over the years with CIPs are, again, what Director Dale and what our CAO has outlined, that one of the advantages is that they provide really a way for us to a little bit control the development as it rolls out, and that we can see some of the things that we want to see. For example, affordable housing. That's something I like to hear about. I really think it's important for us to incentivize development right now, especially with the uncertainty around the governance review and the uncertainty that some people are feeling. And also, I see the advantage of ensuring that we have higher density development, more development, because the more homes we have, the more homes there are on the market, and in theory, at least to a certain extent, the price of housing will go down if you look at it from a market perspective.
Do you have any questions, Councillor?
No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. All right, I'll read the motion. Okay, continue.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot I did have a question. So, will there be a regional incentive component available for this development? Because I looked at the region's website and there didn't appear to be any change, although I have heard that the incentives were on hold for the time being, subject to the review that's going on. And I'm talking about the Utopia development in
Yes.
particular.
Ms. Dale?
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So in regards to the mixed-use residential intensification CIP, the region does provide for development charge reduction, but theirs is capped at 50%. They do not match any of the tax increment financing, and that was, the applicants were aware that there is no matching funding for the tax increment financing.
So that portion of the regional incentives is still happening for now. It hasn't been put on the back burner in the 2019 budget?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the changes to the regional incentives, the development charge reduction grant was always still available, so they didn't cancel that one in particular. What they did was reduce the funding for some of the other ones.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Kirkopoulos?
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I could just make one more comment, and I think it is important, I don't want it to get missed, and that is both, and Kathleen did mention it, but both the development charges reduction program as well as the tax increment applications must both pay, in terms of tax increment applicants must pay new taxes in full before any refund is provided. And similarly, I think as Kathleen mentioned, development charges are paid in full, again, before anything is granted back. So there is that, I think that level of comfort or that level of security that we're not actually giving any grant or any money out until everything is actually paid in full. So we're receiving the benefit of the full and then paying out these particular portions. But absolutely, I think as previous promised, we can put that into maybe an easier to explain situation in some illustrative examples.
All right, thank you very much. I've read the motion. Your pleasure on the motion, all in favor?
This is for all?
Do you want me to do them individually? Yes, okay. We're now voting on item number 1, 2019-35, site plan agreement between 257-5291 Ontario Inc. and the town, 4514 Ontario Street. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Just a moment. And item number 2, 2019-36, a bylaw to designate the industrial lands and the rural areas as a community improvement project area. Your pleasure on the motion. All of those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Item number 3, 2019-37, a bylaw to adopt the community improvement plan for the industrial lands and the rural areas. Your pleasure on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Item number 4, 2019-38, a bylaw to authorize a community improvement plan grant with NHDG Utopia, Inc. Your pleasure on the motion. Those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. All right. Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to the next, second part, moved by Councillor Russell and seconded by Councillor Timmers, that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 2019-39, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held Monday, April 15th, 2019, being read a first, second, and third time. That bylaw number 2019-39 be enacted and passed, and that the mayor and clerk sign and seal the said bylaw. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Benjima and seconded by Councillor Brunei that council on April 15th, 2019 be adjourned. All those in favor? The motion is carried.
Announcements?
Did I miss announcements?
Oh, I'm very sorry. Did you have anything that you would like to? All right,
Let's
Madam
go
Clerk,
back.
could you give us some advice on
We'll go
how
back.
this could be achieved?
It's okay, we're still in the meeting.
All right,
I mean, even though we have adjourned, we can do this.
all right. Councilor McPherson, happy to recognize.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll be very quick. So Thursday, we are having our first meeting of the expanded BIA. The board is getting together, and we're also welcoming in 2 new board members on Thursday. So very exciting to get going after our AGM and after the whole expansion of the BIA, and moving forward. Here we go.
That's great.
Thank you.
very much, Councilor. That was a good piece of news. Thank you. All right. Well, we really are done now. Thank you very much. It's very,
Anyone else? No one else?
nope, nobody else.